Even the quietest towns have their secrets to hide. A neighborhood full of family doesn't mean it's always safe.
There's blood on the bed and he is struggling to stuff out of his mouth.
Well, the first thing I think they noticed when they were walking up where the guns lined up along the sidewalk.
Robinson Police.
The police found when they arrived what looked like a burglary situation.
No lie stays hidden forever, and the evidence always finds the truth. Just south of Waco, Texas, is the small suburban area of Robinson.
Robinson is a suburb of Waco, and just your quintessential bedroom community, as the people call them. Very close-knit.
The two cities are right together. It's basically a residential area with some shops and a little bit of business.
You have the small town feel, but close enough to a bigger town with bigger amenities in it.
A lot of good folks live there, small school, very tight-knit community.
But even the smallest towns can have their dark side.
Robinson 911, what's your emergency? Hello? Okay, what's the problem? I got up this morning, I was in my son's room because I didn't sleep. My back door was open, my husband's guns are all gone, and there's blood on the bed and he is struggling all the stuff out of his mouth. Okay, so he is there? He's here, but I have to stay on the line with me. Hang on one second, I'm gonna dispatch officer, stay on. I do have officers around. You don't see anybody, I mean, like there's nobody around or anything, do you? I don't see anything, this back door was wide open, I went back there, turned on the lamp, and I shut the door, and then I heard my husband put my hair off. I can't really respond to me.
And he is breathing.
I can see his face moving up and down.
In the morning hours of around 6 o'clock, a woman named Gentry called in to 911 and said that her husband had a gunshot wound in the head and blood all over.
The police are quick to arrive on the scene, showing up even before Darlene gets off the phone with the 911 operator.
Robinson Police.
I'm sorry, what?
The police found when they arrived what looked like a burglary situation. Mr. Gentry was in bed, and he had received a gunshot wound to the head.
With nothing else left to do, Darlene Gentry is left to wait and hope that her husband Keith will survive.
Darlene and Keith Gentry were a young married couple with children living in city limits of Robinson, Texas.
She was a homecoming queen at Cameron, a city near Waco. Keith and she met at Texas State Technical Institute, a school, and they dated off and on while they were in school, and then both of them got out and left. She went up to Dallas, but then moved back, and they continued dating and finally got married. They, in pretty short order, had 3 children.
Keith was a hardworking guy. Worked for a drafting company. He lived near his folks, a very close-knit family.
Keith's father, Wayman, said that Keith didn't appear to be very happy, and that he was going to stick it out with her, but it seemed like that they were having difficulties.
Darlene originally studies to be a dental assistant and moves to Dallas to work for a dentist. But after an incident where her car is stolen, she decides to move back home and goes back to school to get a nursing degree.
You know, the fact that she was a homecoming queen, she was an exceptionally attractive young woman.
Keith proposes to Darlene in 1999, and their wedding is soon after. As their lives together in marriage truly begin, they move into a house next door to Keith's parents. In the early morning of November 9th, 2005, Darlene is the first in her house to stir. She wakes up in one of her children's rooms after spending the night trying to help them sleep by watching movies together.
The children were sick, that she had been staying with them during the night, and that she got up early in the morning and started going around the house, and the back door was open, and that Keith's guns were missing.
Darlene races from the open gun cabinet to find Keith, all the while calling out his name.
And so then she went into the bedroom and found her husband, Keith, lying there with blood and a bullet wound in his head.
When Darlene finds her husband mortally wounded in their bed, she calls 911 for help.
911, much emergency. There's blood on the bed and she is struggling.
Police arrive at the scene within minutes. Immediately upon reaching the house, things start to look off.
Go check the inside. Go check the guy. Watch yourself going in. We've got a lot of guns here in the front yard. Robinson Police.
I'm sorry, what?
Stand right here and just keep scanning. Don't let anybody near them guns.
Well, the first thing I think they noticed when they were walking up were the guns lined up along the sidewalk.
Keith Gentry had several hunting-type weapons, long guns, shotguns, rifles, and they were kind of out in the grass in the front yard, and they were kind of lined up in rows. And there wasn't but about maybe 5 or 6 of these.
Keith is in critical condition and is treated as the first priority before any investigation into the scene can begin.
This is not a high crime area by any stretch of the imagination. And to make that point even more profound is that where they lived in particular is surrounded by family, almost like a family compound. And none of what we were being told about the crime scene made sense.
Keith is taken to the hospital. Every second could mean the difference between life and death.
The gun case was open, but it was unlocked with a key.
When doing an inventory of the guns, found out that one was in fact missing. That didn't match anything that they had ever seen about a robbery.
It just did not sound to the Robinson Police Department like she was as concerned.
They called and said that Keith was not doing well and maybe she needed to get to the hospital.
In the small suburb of Robinson, Texas, residents feel safe and secure in their tight-knit community. On an early November morning, the Gentry family learns that tragedy can strike anywhere, even when surrounded by family. Darlene Gentry wakes up to find her back door open and gun cabinet empty. She fears a burglar has gotten into her house in the night. Darlene finds her husband Keith in their bed, barely holding on to his life, with a bullet wound in his head. She calls 911, but can Keith survive?
Keith Gentry was transported to the hospital. The police then talked to Darlene and asked her to come down to the headquarters with them.
Darlene is brought to the police station to give her statement about the events of the morning.
Just as a matter of routine, Darlene was taken to the Robinson Police Department where she was being interviewed by police detectives.
Saw the blood on the sheets. Was there any weapons on the bed?
I honestly saw nothing other than just the foam coming out of his mouth, and I tried to shake him. And when I tried to shake him, that's when I noticed something by his head, and I kind of leaned in more to look, and that's when I went to hollering at the kids, "Get out, get out, get out."
What did you see?
I just saw the red, and I automatically assumed it was blood just because, I mean, and so that's when I started calling, and it was just like I don't know.
While Keith is taken to the hospital and Darlene is interviewed, the police investigate the scene of the crime, on the lookout for any evidence of the burglary.
When the Robinson police detectives arrived, they called in the Texas Rangers.
Her story, of course, was it was a robbery. There was no evidence of a break-in. She said the guns had been stolen. There was no evidence that the gun case had been broken into, and nothing else was taken. And then to find the firearms stacked rather neatly on the lawn in front of the house that didn't match anything that they had ever seen about a robbery.
Did you at any time touch him?
Well, I mean, I know I physically did, I mean, like I shook his leg when I was trying to get his attention, but phone's in my pocket, I just turned it off.
The reason I asked is we got some rangers at the house, some Texas Rangers. They're assisting with the crime scene stuff. They found what they think might be blood in y'all's bathroom sink.
I don't know, as I said, I haven't, other than touching his leg, that is the only part I believe I touched of him.
So you don't remember going after touching maybe any bloody area?
No, I was literally, my cell phone was on my dresser, which is on his side of the bed. When I couldn't get him to respond to me, I turned directly from there, picked up the phone and, you know, turned it on, and then, of course, had to wait for the service to hit and hit 911.
The gun case was open, but it was unlocked with a key.
As authorities make their way through the house, questions about Darlene's story begin to percolate in their minds. And it isn't only the evidence found around the house that has them wondering.
The officers and their experience, even people with no medical training, try to at least do something to help a wounded spouse or a person. She had done nothing. She gave a story that she was probably in shock or something like that, but the fact that she did nothing was very suspicious to them.
Is Darlene too in shock to help her husband? Or could her inaction be a sign that something else is going on?
Keep in mind, a 911 operator is going to want her to do CPR because that's just how they're trained to do. And keeping also in mind that Darlene was a registered nurse at the time, but in order to properly do CPR, you have to pull someone off the bed because you cannot adequately do CPR in bed. You need to have a hard surface. But she never did that. She spoke to the dispatcher, the 911 operator, about how he was making a gurgling sound, and it just did not sound to the Robinson Police Department like she was as concerned or as frantic as what a normal spouse might have been when they found their husband dead in bed.
The search continues through the house, but as hard as they try, police can't find definitive evidence of any break-in having occurred.
I don't recall how long we had been there, but we'd been there quite a while because we were having to go from room to room. You know, we have to search and look, and you know, we were looking for fingerprints. We were looking for all evidence that might have bolstered what the wife had told us about the burglary, but we just could not find it.
That was my partner again. The detective I've got at the hospital said that they need the wife there to make some medical decisions on behalf of your husband. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, if you'll just bear with me just a few more minutes, I'm gonna get you to the hospital. Until I can sort through what's going on. Darlene, you listening to me?
Yes, I'm listening.
Everyone's a suspect right now until I can determine how your husband suffered this gunshot wound. That's not to take away that he could have done it himself. You understand this?
No.
If there was a gun on that bed, you moved it to save his integrity or anything like that, I need to know now.
I did not move a gun.
Did you harm your husband?
No, I did not harm my husband.
You and I have been working, we've built a pretty good relationship here. You know, I'm trying to figure out what happened.
I know.
That's all I'm trying to do right now.
Darlene was in the middle of her initial police interview down at the police station, and they called and said that Keith was not doing well and maybe she needed to get to the hospital.
Darlene's interview isn't over, but the police put it on hold after news of Keith's condition reaches the station.
They received a message from the hospital that her husband, Keith, was brain dead, and then took her to the hospital, and she signed the paperwork so that he would not be kept on life support.
Darlene is given time to sign the paperwork and say her goodbyes. But after things conclude at the hospital, she is brought back to the police department to continue her interview.
I'm just not doing this alone because I'm just...
Are you saying that you want to get an attorney?
Yes. So my sisters are having a fit. They don't want me signing anything.
They continued to talk with her later in the day, and she began to feel that she was being interrogated, and eventually invoked her right to cease the interrogation and leave.
I'm just afraid that I'm gonna get, I'm trying to tell y'all exactly what I remember, and as I said, it's been a long day.
Sure.
And I'm just,
I understand.
I don't want me trying to tell y'all something to turn around and it come out not exactly what I meant and basically bite me in the butt. Basically, is what I don't want to happen.
And we wouldn't let that happen to you, because if there's something we don't understand that you've said, we're going to ask you.
And I've tried to be straightforward and honest with everything that I'm telling y'all. And what I don't know, I'm telling you, I don't know.
Darlene Gentry wakes up early on a November morning. She finds the door open and the gun cabinet unlocked. She races to her husband Keith, but finds him shot in their bed. Keith is rushed to the hospital, but it isn't enough. When Darlene is told that he has been left brain dead, she signs off on removing him from life support. The Texas Rangers are brought in to investigate the burglary, but details aren't matching up. And when Darlene starts to feel interrogated, she asks for a lawyer and leaves the police station. Before Darlene gets back from the police station, the investigation in and around her home continues.
We did believe that one handgun was missing, and we searched for the handgun. We could not find it.
Later, when doing an inventory of the guns, found out that one of his guns was in fact missing. It was a .22 caliber 9-shot revolver. That was the only firearm in the house that could not be accounted for.
Police are able to talk to Keith's father to get more insight into the guns found in the front yard, confirming the missing gun's existence.
The father had given the gun to Keith, knew that he had it, and so they were able to make the determination that that gun was missing.
Meanwhile, one officer makes a very lucky discovery inside the house.
We assisted the Robinson Police Department with the examination of the crime scene, and through this investigation, one of the key pieces of evidence found by Robinson Police Detective Mike Noel was, as he was going through the kitchen trash can, he found a latex surgical glove.
The police requested that she would give them permission to search her house, which she did. And they found a latex glove similar to what a nurse would wear, and inside the glove was a .22 caliber shell that would have fit the revolver.
Now keep in mind, this glove was turned inside out as if it was being worn at the time when the shell casing was picked up. Turned inside out and then placed at the bottom of the trash can, and then what looked like a bunch of leftover food was piled on top of it, as if to hide the surgical glove and the shell casing.
The glove was taken to the crime lab along with the shell. They did DNA on it, and the DNA on the glove matched the DNA of Darlene Gentry. The glove was subsequently tested for gunshot residue, and it was found on it. Interestingly, the defense attorneys asked for that test to be run on it.
As for the bullet shell, firearms experts are able to confirm that the shell would come from the missing .22 caliber revolver. Although without the gun in question, there can be no way of connecting the two beyond it being just a possibility.
There was an autopsy done. The bullet was recovered from his head. The bullet was so badly damaged that they were not able to match it to the gun as far as being fired from the gun, but it was a .22 bullet and consistent with what could have been fired from that gun.
Between the lack of evidence of a burglary having taken place and the shell found in the latex glove, suspicion grows in Darlene's direction. But for some police officers, these suspicions begin much sooner.
Something stinks about this, Gary. I think she did it. Something ain't right here, man. I'm telling you.
Okay, what's the problem? I got it this morning. I was in my son's room because I didn't sleep. My back door was open. My husband's guns are all gone.
The interesting thing about the call was that was the order that everything was described to the 911 operator. Normally, if a person comes in and finds their spouse, mortally wounded, that's the first thing they're going to tell the operator. My husband is badly hurt, we need an ambulance out here. And instead, she went through this long scenario about walking around the house and the guns being missing, and the last thing that she got to was about her husband. And that made everybody very suspicious. It sounded like she was setting up an alibi in her call.
Oh, by the way, my husband's been shot. So it's almost like we call it in the newspaper business, she kind of buried the lead. But it appeared to the investigators early on that she was trying to set up her alibi, or, she went way in too much detail before she actually said, "Oh, my husband's been shot."
If Darlene could be responsible, there is still the question of why hanging in the air.
Keith and Darlene did have some financial problems. There were apparently other problems in the marriage as well. Keith had a fairly large insurance policy. I believe he may have actually had two of them, and it was in the area, I believe, of several $100,000.
You mentioned y'all were trying to save some money. Have y'all been having some financial problems?
Well, we're just, this third kid, and it's killing us basically. So we've just been trying to butt heads, figure out which way, because of course we are getting behind on some bills, and it's just been one thing after another.
Police are able to uncover that Keith is under 2 life insurance policies. Together, they are worth approximately $750,000.
Darlene Gentry's behavior continued to be confusing. She started looking for land to purchase, And she was looking in an area of the county that was about as far away as you could get and still be inside the county. And it wasn't her home, it wasn't where she was used to living. It was a very rural area, and it would have been a long drive for her to go to work every day. But she was dealing with one man who was selling a 5-acre tract of land.
Shortly after her husband's death, there was a gentleman named Pavelka who she had been friendly with, and told him that she would like to move and was looking for a house. He had a house that next to it was a little pond, and she expressed a great deal of interest in the house and the pond, said that her husband had always liked to take the boys out to water sports, and that she thought it would really be nice to have this house with the pond.
Darlene realized that it had a pond on it, and she go, well, that's perfect, because Keith had always wanted a place with a pond so he could take his 3 sons fishing.
So they negotiated prices, and she would come out and look at the land from time to time, and she asked his permission, would it be okay if she spent a little time out there? He says, it's not a problem, drive out and look at it anytime you like.
With the murder weapons still missing, there is no direct evidence to link anyone to the shooting of Keith Gentry. But as the circumstantial case continues to build, authorities believe Darlene is to blame. Nearly a month after Keith is shot, the police move to make an arrest.
I believe the crime occurred on November the 7th, and she was actually arrested November the 28th. Keith's father said they simply couldn't believe that she had done that.
Darlene Gentry told the man she wanted to buy the land, but she didn't want the pond anymore.
That kind of set in motion this scheme that the ranger had, that she would go back out there.
The rangers then had set up a camera on the pond so a video could be recorded of what was happening there.
When Keith Gentry is shot in the middle of the night, the police begin to suspect Darlene, his wife, may be responsible.
Something stinks about this, Gary. I think she did it.
While their suspicions begin early on, the lack of a clear motive and the missing murder weapon keep them from closing the case. Meanwhile, Darlene looks for a new place to make a home, telling friends her current house is too full of awful memories after the shooting. While searching the Gentry residence, police find a spent shell casing for a .22 hiding inside a latex glove with Darlene's DNA. An arrest warrant is finally permitted, and Darlene is brought into custody nearly a month after Keith's death. But Darlene's arrest is short-lived.
Well, after she was arrested, Wayman Gentry, Keith's father, said that they simply couldn't believe that she had done that, and they were supportive of her and even helped her raise bail money.
Keith's parents raised the $50,000 necessary to get Darlene out on bail. When released from jail, Darlene pushes forward on buying the land she'd been shown before her arrest, only now she has an unusual request.
At some point during their negotiation, Darlene Gentry told the man she wanted to buy the land, but she didn't want the pond anymore. And the man thought that was strange because in Texas, anyone who buys a piece of property, they want water on it. Water is a commodity in Texas. So he was very confused about this, but he knew that she had also been arrested. So he contacted law enforcement and said, this woman who was arrested for killing her husband wants to buy my property. She wanted this pond, talked about how it was something she always wanted, but now she wants me to fill it in with dirt. He said, "Do you reckon she threw something into that pond?" Well, we interviewed the man who owned the land, and we agreed that her behavior was suspicious at best. And we asked the man if it would be all right if we came out and looked in the pond. So myself and Ranger Foster, we contacted the state dive team. We made arrangements for them to come out and search the bottom of this body of water. It wasn't large, but it was big enough that it needed to be searched correctly. The dive team never even had to suit up. They waded out into the water. They saw what looked like maybe a stick in the water. They walked over to that stick about knee deep. They reached down and they pulled out a .22 caliber pistol.
In fairly short order, he was able to find a 9-shot .22 caliber revolver there in the water.
Within only 10 to 15 minutes, the dive team are able to locate the assumed murder weapon within the pond.
To begin with, the pistol itself was pristine. It was not covered in dirt or moss. It had not been there very long, and that was plainly obvious to all involved. We showed the weapon to Mr. Gentry, Keith Gentry's father, and he was able to positively identify it as a weapon that he had given his son at some point in time. So we now know that this is most likely the weapon that was missing from the house and probably the murder weapon.
With the bullet removed from Keith being too damaged to have an absolute confirmation that it must have been fired from a particular gun, authorities are left with only circumstantial evidence to link the gun to the shooting. It's the only gun missing from the Gentry residence after the shooting, matches the caliber of the bullet, and appears to have only been recently disposed of. Having found the missing firearm in a place where the evidence points most clearly to Darlene, the idea of what must have happened on the night of the shooting crystallizes in the minds of police. With no evidence of a break-in actually having occurred, Darlene is the only one who appears to have had the means to have gotten to the guns. Darlene may have put most of the guns on the lawn to create confusion, and interest in the pond could potentially be due to a plan to dispose of the murder weapon. Even as police and Texas Rangers come up with what they believe must have happened, they still have nothing concrete to say Darlene has to have been involved.
And I came up with the idea to tell the landowner, to tell Miss Gentry that he would be willing to fill in that pond with dirt, but that he would be afraid that he would get his tractor stuck. So he was going to use a pump and drain the water out first.
That kind of set in motion this scheme that the ranger had, and just to plain a hunch that she would go back out there and try to find a gun.
The Rangers then had set up a camera on the pond so a video could be recorded of what was happening there.
606. We told her on one day, as I recall, and by the next day, about noon, she had driven out there by herself. We watched her put on rubber boots and reach into the back of her vehicle and get a probe of some sort. Then we turned the cameras on and watched her walk down the path to the pond, walk over to where the stick had been placed earlier, and start probing around in the water looking for something. And of course we knew what it was. She was looking for the weapon.
All of this was recorded, and her efforts to dig around in the pond with the stick were all videotaped and were absolutely on record.
With the video evidence of Darlene searching out the discarded pistol, the police have what they need to put this case to rest. It all starts with a 911 call from a scared wife reporting a burglary and her husband being shot. But as the authorities look into her story, they discover how full of lies it truly is. When the probable murder weapon is found in a pond, a sting operation is put together to link Darlene to the crime. The sting works, and Texas Rangers have video evidence of Darlene trying to retrieve the gun.
Darlene's case went to trial in February 2007, and it was a high-profile case. Lots of people jammed the courtroom, a lot of friends and family on both sides, but mainly Keith's side. Darlene's mother was there.
The thing is, it was a circumstantial case. Nobody could point at her and say they had seen her shoot her husband, Keith Gentry. Anytime a case is circumstantial, you always have some concern, as a jury going to convict somebody if you don't have eyewitness testimony. We felt that we had a strong case. The 911 call just went against all human experience. Nobody goes through a convoluted story about getting up and walking around and things being stolen and then wandering into a bedroom.
I got up this morning, I was in my son's room because I didn't sleep. My back door was open, my husband's guns are all gone, and there's blood on the bed and shoes.
Then and only then saying, my husband's got a bullet wound in his head. Our life experience says that when somebody finds their spouse terribly wounded, first thing they're going to do is call and say, my spouse is terribly hurt and I need an ambulance here as quickly as possible, which is exactly what she didn't do. Three things that were really strong for us and we felt confident about. The first was the lead-in, the 911 call. Then the fact that the missing gun was later found in the pond, and then she went out and was digging around trying to find it. How would she ever have known that the gun was there if she had not been the one that shot him and then concealed the gun and then later threw it in the pond?
Later, her explanation was that she heard a rumor that the gun was there, and she wanted to be the one to find it and turn it into the police to help them find the real killer.
The interesting part of that is that the defense never even cross-examined on the video. They didn't talk about it. They just pretty much acted like it didn't happen.
After laying out all the evidence of Darlene's guilt, the question of why she did it still remains unanswered.
We were never able to make a determination that the killing was to get the policy. If it'd been determined that that was the motive for the killing, it would have been a capital murder and she would have been possibly facing the death penalty, but there was no evidence that that was the motive for the killing. As defense attorneys will frequently do, tried to minimize everything that was negative toward her. They were trying to say that she was just sort of in shock at the house, and that's why she said what she did on the tape. Then with the gun, they played up, as we expected them to, that it was a circumstantial case, that no one had seen Darlene commit the crime. And then also, they tried to point the fingers somewhat at Pavelka and were trying to give the idea that maybe he's the one that had gotten hold of the gun and was trying to set her up for some reason.
After only 5 hours of deliberations, the jury reaches their conclusion. They find Darlene guilty of murder.
The final verdict in Darlene Gentry's trial was she was found guilty of the murder of her husband, Keith Gentry. She received about a 66 or so year sentence, and she's currently serving that sentence in state prison here in Texas.
Here in Texas, murder is a first-degree felony, and the punishment range is from 5 years to 99 years or life.
We believe that the verdict was just, and we believe that justice was served. Kind of a backstory to this is that she did not like the fact that we videotaped her looking for that weapon in that pond. It just wrecked her whole theory that she was an innocent victim also, and that she had nothing to do with this.
While Keith's parents don't want to believe at first that Darlene could be responsible for the death of their son, it is in part because of Keith's father identifying the gun that the case is able to be solved.
Through the course of seeing what the evidence was, they became convinced that she had, in fact, murdered their son. And of course, they were very bitter, would be the right word about that. They wanted her to get the maximum, to be in prison, and also not to be able to have any contact with the grandchildren.
Keith's parents are given custody of their grandchildren after Darlene is found guilty.
She got exactly what she deserved. She took the life of a man who did nothing but love her. She took away the father of 2 little boys, and they took away the son to a mother and a father who loved him. And they had invested their whole life into this family, Keith and Darlene. So she is where she needs to be, and she'll be there until she's not so pretty anymore.
We were, of course, satisfied. We were ourselves convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that she was guilty, of course.
I think the community thought it was just. I mean, if you kill your husband while he's sleeping, that's a pretty cold thing to do, and you should go to prison for a long time for that.
I'll say this. This is the perfect example of how law enforcement can work when they work together. The fact that her DNA was found on a glove wrapped around a shell casing that belonged to the weapon that was found in the water. That's just good, solid police work on the part of Mike Noel, who took it upon himself to get his hands dirty and get inside a trash can. And without that, and without the video, Darlene Gentry might have gotten away with this.